Now, Game Week 7 might have only just begun, but in today's video, we're going to be running through my top transfer targets ahead of Game Week 8 to give you a little bit of food for thought over the international break. Now, of course, before we dive into today's video, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as we're about 480 people away from hitting the big 20k subscriber mark. So if you want to help me hit that goal, make sure you are hitting that subscribe button, make sure you're liking the video, and of course, if you've got any questions about your team, get them in the comments, as me or potentially someone else within the community will try and help you out. As always, with my transfer targets videos, I like to take a look at the 11FI data for the next 5 game weeks. Of course, if you want to go and check out their amazing website, there is a link in the description to go and look at that. First up, we're going to take a look at predicted goals over the next 5 game weeks, and it's looking very, very strong for Arsenal over that period. Now, game week 8 is their most difficult fixture. However, game week 9, 10, and 11 and 12 are looking very, very good, which bodes well for people that, of course, haven't banked on an Arsenal attacker or are on a wild card this week. It means that they can go and get Saka, who looks like he is going to be the penalty taker for Arsenal now. I know we've had a lot of confusion. Obviously, we were led to believe it was going to be Gyökeres by a Swedish kind of journalist. Some comments from Arteta as well, him taking the previous one. So we were under that impression, but it is looking likely now that it is going to be Saka. And that bodes well with those great, of course, attacking fixtures coming up. Now, I'm filming this while it is halftime in the Liverpool-Chelsea game. Currently 1-0 to Chelsea in that one. However, this is going to be, again, another big switching point for Liverpool. So do maybe monitor how they get on in the second half and maybe look at what attacking assets you might want to potentially pick up. Because as you can see here, the numbers are looking pretty decent. The problem is, though, Salah's not really delivering the goods. Looks, again, like he might start to see some reduced minutes with a benching against Galatasaray. And, of course, like Isak, Ekitike, Gakpo, all not 100% firing and minutes aren't quite secure. But the fixtures, definitely there over the next few weeks. Same goes with Chelsea as well. So your João Pedros, your Enzos. If we get positive news around Cole Palmer over the international break, definitely going to be worth some consideration if you're on a wild card or with some transfers as well. Haaland still looks like a very good hold as well, with good fixtures over the next few. And given his very, very strong form, I would definitely suggest he is going to be a very steady Eddie. Brighton as well, looking great with some good projected numbers across the next few weeks. I know a lot of people bought in Minter ahead of game week 7, obviously yet to play in game week 8, but again, could be a very, very decent, valuable pickup. Same with Newcastle as well. I'm really keen on Anthony Gordon. Don't mind Walter Marder either, but Anthony Gordon is probably the standout pick for me, with, of course, him having penalties. Now, Manchester United have their most difficult fixture in game week 8, but across, some of the other weeks, they've got some decent projected goals in there, and I think maybe like picks like Benjamin Sesko, who's starting to find his feet, could as well potentially be, somewhere where maybe you want to look. Obviously, we're seeing a big drop-off for Aston Villa, so their assets, they've had their good fixture run now. They're heading into some more difficult fixtures. Obviously, they're getting into the swing of European football as well. So this is probably going to be the time where a lot of us are looking to, of course, offload them. Same with Nottingham Forest as well. So Chris Wood probably going to be on his way out. And something that I have noticed here is Everton ridiculously low down on the 11-5 models. So maybe the people that have taken a look at Ndiaye or potentially Jack Grealish, who, of course, can't play in game week 8 with him being on loan from Manchester City, maybe it is going to be time to potentially look to offload those Everton assets as well, with some low projected goal numbers coming up. Let's move over then to the clean sheet data, again coming from 11FI. Again, there'll be a link in the description if you want to go and check it out and look at those Arsenal numbers. I've been speaking about it for weeks and speaking about this big turning point that was always going to come up with Arsenal. I mean, they fully delivered today, didn't they? I mean, if you had Gabriel last week as well, you've got a 13-pointer and a 9-pointer back-to-back weeks. If you went with Raya or Timber or anybody like that, you've got your clean sheet. Obviously, Timber got the assist as well today. So the Arsenal defence, especially a double up, is looking super, super appealing. And these fixtures do really keep on going. If you saw the post that Rob T FPL put out a few weeks ago, it is all the way up until game week 19 with these very, very strong projections that we are seeing on screen right now. Obviously, I've spoke about Chelsea and their good fixture swing coming up around game week 8, game week 9. We're seeing, them kind of towards the top of this list as well. So Again, might be worth potentially considering looking at some of their assets. However, the problem is going to be rotation, some suspensions and stuff like that. But maybe if you've got Sanchez in goal, could be maybe worth just keeping him if you want on a wild card for this week. I like the Newcastle fixtures coming up as well. I think obviously Dan Burn is probably the one that most people are looking at as their DEFCON beast. I think Fulham as well have some decent projections here. So probably Joachim Andersen could be a very decent shout with, of course, his defensive contributions. Everton, Bournemouth as well. So Senesi and Tarkowski, your DEFCON beast, also going to be pretty good value. And Crystal Palace as well have some okay projections. So picks like Richards, Lacroix and Gahey could also be pretty decent potential assets. If you are maybe thinking about a bench boost over the next few weeks as well, that is very much on with game week 8 and probably game week 9 for Burnley and Leeds, as you can see there, with a 34% chance and a 28% probability over the next few weeks. Same with Burnley, 29 and 21. And Sunderland, you probably are looking at a game week 8 bench boost. If, of course, like I said, you are planning on using some of your cheaper assets to potentially get out. They've got some good projected numbers coming up over the next few weeks. And that is where I would be looking to, of course, bench boost for this week. That is enough on the 11FI data. Like I said, if you want to go and check it out for yourself, I will leave a link in the description. But let's go in and dive and take a look at some players. I put that backwards, but you know what I meant. Let's go and take a look at some players. Okay, the first player I want to discuss is going to be Bukayo Saka. I mean, he's going to be very, very popular. I think probably one of the most transferred in players heading into this game week. I think a lot of people as well, if they are on a game week 8 wildcard, he is probably going to be one of the first names that you are going to see in a lot of wildcard drafts over the next few weeks. Obviously, we've seen with the 11FI data, decent projected goal numbers, decent clean sheet numbers as well. And looking at the FDR here, there are some great fixtures. Fulham are leaking pretty much goals across the board. Palace, probably their most difficult with them being currently 19 unbeaten. But Burnley and Sunderland in game week 10 and game week 11 offers potentially up a, some maybe opportunities for a triple captaincy there if you really did want to go for it. I think the Spurs game as well, a derby, definitely be up for it. So, there's some good fixtures, especially the next 5, really attackable for Arsenal from not only the defensive perspective, but also from the attacking perspective as well. And I think Saka taking that penalty today is going to obviously improve his stocks as a player and is definitely going to elevate his predicted points over that time period as well. Because you know me, guys, I absolutely love penalty takers. It is one of the most broken metrics that you need to exploit in whatever fantasy game you play. If you find yourself a penalty taker, it's just one of those things that you need to have within your side. Even if the player isn't having like the best game, as we've seen with Bruno Fernandes in some game weeks, still can come away with some pretty decent scores if, of course, they do convert the penalty. And it's just one of those things where top teams do get quite a lot of penalties across the season, especially if they've got like tricky wingers, which Arsenal definitely have with Saka. Of course, with, the fullbacks attacking where they picked up today with Timber. So they have those tricky players that can, of course, win them penalties as well. So it is just one of those metrics that is worth monitoring. And, of course, Saka can dabble in some corners as well. And we all know how prolific Arsenal are from those set pieces. They are currently leading the way for goals from set pieces. And, of course, the expected goals created from set pieces as well. So that bodes well from an assist perspective for him. But like I said, I think a lot of people are going to, of course, be looking at him. I think, with Bruno Fernandes having Liverpool in game week 8, a lot of people are probably going to make that switch if they already haven't tripled up on Arsenal. I think the big dilemma for a lot of people is going to be if they are tripled up on Arsenal. Very similar to the situation I'm in. I've got Raya, I've got Gabriel, and I've got Gyok. Would I sell Gyok to go and get Saka? Now, I'm an absolute demon for a penalty taker. I will do absolutely anything to get penalty takers into my side. However, with the fixtures coming up, taking out a striker that, he isn't quite hitting the heights, but is seeing very, very good minutes at the moment and will probably score some goals over this period, does it feel like the right switch, or does it feel like I'm maybe potentially burning a few transfers? For me, it feels kind of the latter. But like I said, I am such a demon for those penalty takers because it is just one of the most broken exploits you can get within the game. And if I was to triple captain anybody, I probably would feel a lot more confident looking at Saka in game week 10 or in game week 11 ahead of Gok. So I do think that is one that I'm going to kind of take a little bit of time to think about over the international break. My initial thought process was I would not do the move. I would not, of course, take Gyökeres out and try and find a way to get Saka in. That wouldn't be the play for me. However, I've got 4 free transfers, so I've got a little bit of flexibility with my side. If maybe you've only got the 2, probably not going to be worth it. Maybe if you're in a position like myself, you've got the ability to, of course, flex about with it, move around a few different pieces, then that could potentially be worth it to get the penalty taker in for Arsenal. However, what I would say on this is if you've gone for Gok and, you know, you've only got 1 transfer, I probably wouldn't be doing this for like a minus move. That personally for me would not be one of my suggestions either. Stick with Gok. He's still got the same good fixtures coming up. Still, Arsenal are fancy to score some goals, and I do think he will, of course, pick up some goals over that period. Now, some people as well might blame content creators and be like, look, you said Gyökeres was going to be the penalty taker. From all accounts that we were led to believe, from whatever, you know, journalists have been saying, comments from Arteta, the fact that Gyökeres has got a very good penalty taking record, and the fact that Saka has gifted away penalties in the past, it did kind of make sense that Gyökeres was going to be the penalty taker for this side. So if you're going to come for the content creators, we're just working off the information we've got. We, of course, have to make educated guesses based off that information and, of course, justify that with our team selections as well. And that's why you've seen a lot of people go with Gyökeres within the community as well. Before, of course, you do come and hate on us all. Let's move on then to the defenders from Arsenal, because like we saw with the 11-5 numbers, they are just terrific, genuinely terrific. And I think a lot of people are going to be on wildcard this week looking at potential double ups, and I'm going to suggest my favourite 2 players. I'm going to go straight off the bat. It's going to be Raya and Gabriel for me. I think, you know, Timber has, as you can see here with the points, has been doing very well, but it is the fact that he's hit 0 defensive contributions, and I do think the fullbacks are probably going to be more suspect to some rotation across this more busier period, especially when we start to get into like November, December, when of course teams are playing like Saturday, Wednesday, like consistently. I do think, you know, the fullbacks, Calafiori, Timber, probably at that point are going to see a lot more rotation. I think your Gabriel and Saliba, if they're fully fit and available, are going to play a large proportion of minutes and see very, very little limited risk in rotation. And it turns out Gabriel's actually quite good at hitting defensive contributions. Back-to-back weeks, already beaten his total that he managed to hit up last season for defensive contributions. Obviously, we saw the bullet header. We all know what he's capable of. I alluded to it in the last section as well, talking about Arsenal's very, very good expected goals created from set pieces so far, the fact that they're the leading side for goals from set plays. And if you've ever watched Arteta over the years, you know that's fully how Arsenal set up. They've got those great fixtures coming up. We all know that. So I think the double up, if I was on a wild card or even with transfers, definitely would be on for me, because I do think we're probably going to get to a period as well where Arsenal just having the single defender isn't even probably going to be enough for a green arrow. Very similar to a situation we've been in previous seasons where it's having 2 of them that is going to make you kind of, you know, want an Arsenal clean sheet. Because I think there was periods last season or maybe the season prior where Arsenal was so prolific at clean sheets where it was actually beneficial to lose it if you just had 1 player, rather than, of course, if you had 2, you were hoping for that clean sheet. So we could be in a very similar position again. I think for me, the most nailed players are going to be Raya and Gabriel. Saliba probably a little bit further back from that. And then even further back from that, you are looking at the Timbers and the Calafioris of the world. But I think for me, they're probably a little bit more susceptible to rotation. So I would, like I said, just pay that little bit more of a premium to go and get myself a Gabriel. Or, like I said, if I'm on a wild card as well, go and pick up a David Raya. Now, I know it's obviously looking quite tight at the moment between the points between Gabriel and Yuri and Timber, but for me, Gabriel still edges it out over Timber. I think he's got multiple routes to points where we're not seeing Timber even get close to defensive contributions. He's been nowhere near it in any game so far this season. He, of course, has been picking up goals from corners and stuff like that, but I think Gabriel has more avenues to points with DEFCON, with, of course, him being a set piece threat in the air, which we've seen in previous seasons as well, and they both, of course, play for a pretty mint defence. So yeah, Arsenal defence definitely worth investing in my personal opinion. Gabriel and Raya, they're going to be my top 2 picks out of everybody else. I think if you're looking elsewhere, you probably maybe could come undone with some rotation, so try and find that extra little bit of money and buy these 2 players. Heading on to the early kickoff golden boy, it is going to be Mohamed Kudus, of course, picking up a nice, juicy double-digit haul for him today. However, I'm going to argue that this is probably not the right time to invest in him for me personally. I think I look at those fixtures coming up. There aren't any kind of gimmies. I know Villa haven't started the season great, but I do expect them to start to get a little bit better. And I just think as well, you look at that, you look at the fact that they've got Champions League and League Cup kind of sandwiched in between these two games. Now, I know Kudus' minutes in the Premier League have been very, very good so far. However, I do suspect, with there being so much football coming up, that there will be some maybe rotation. Now, that might be in the Champions League, that might be in the League Cup, where there are easier fixtures. I think they've got Copenhagen in between game week 9 and game week 10. That might be where they potentially rotate him, but it would be something that would be playing in the back of my mind with a hectic schedule coming up, some difficult fixtures, as you can see here from the Premier League and the ticker. I would be a little bit suspect on Kudus. And I also think his underlying data definitely doesn't really scream like a high quality pick to me. Massive overachievement in terms of his expected assists. His expected goals, he probably has been due a goal, but I mean, the goal that he scored today, very, very fortunate. I think a large proportion of his expected goals actually came in the last fixture where he hit the bar or came very close to hitting the bar. It was like 0.78. So pretty much you can discount 0.78 from one game. The rest of it probably is looking a little bit skewed in my personal opinion, and you know what I mean, you're probably looking at like 0.5 0.6 expected goals from 6 game weeks. Doesn't really fill me with confidence when I'm paying 6.7 million, and I think we're going to be obviously looking at a lot of other enticing assets like Saka that a lot of people maybe want to go for, or maybe like a Caicedo all the way down at that cheaper price, or a Reinders, who have better fixtures on paper coming up. Those, for me, feel like better pickups than buying into Kudus right now. I know his ownership is ridiculously high, but for me personally, it just feels like a little bit of a trap. The fixtures are getting difficult for Spurs. There's heavy fixture congestion coming up with Champions League and League Cup, and I just think he's massively overachieving on his underlying data so far. However, if you do want to invest in a Spurs asset that has the good minutes, he definitely seems like the most promising one right now. But for me, probably an avoid. Let's move on then to our final player of today's video. Like I said, if you are enjoying the content, make sure you're liking, commenting, and subscribing as well. Like I said, we're closing in on that 20k subscriber mark. It is going to be Semenyo. The guy is just on smoke this season, and I called it. I genuinely called it earlier in the season. I said he could have his Bryan Mbeumo breakout season. He's having his Bryan Mbeumo breakout season. 66 points so far this season. 9 goal involvements. The first goal yesterday was unbelievable. Just to Megs Leno, slot it into the bottom of the goal. It was succulent. It was a great fixture. Goal coming up. I was kind of alluding to the next point. The fixtures. Now, some people might be looking at this and thinking, why would you invest into Semenyo? There's difficult games coming up. He is very much a transition player. And I think the rate that Bournemouth are, they're not like, you know, some pushover side. They're going to be competing for European places this season. So we're going to have to win a lot of games. And I look at those games and I think Palace, that's going to be a really competitive game. Both sides are going to be up for it. Both are very, very difficult to play. And I think for a player that, you know, can operate in these tight transitional games, it is going to be somebody like Semenyo. Given how Nottingham Forest are defending at the moment, that is a kind of, you know, a fixture I want to get a little bit of a slice for, you know, lick of the lips fixture. City away, never going to be easy, but if Kluivert's not on the pitch, you're going to be playing a penalty taker who's a super highly owned, you still would play him in that one. Then you have a run of Villa, West Ham and Sunderland. Definitely investable fixtures, no European football and no Carabao Cup football. So this guy is going to be playing 90 minutes every single week. He's absolutely smashing it out of the park. And I don't know if anybody caught the interview that he did after the game last night. He spoke about what was one of the big things he improved on over the summer. And it was just taking, you know, he said last season he was snatching at opportunity, he was just snatching at his chances and just overthinking it. So the big thing that he did, I think he said like he maybe went and saw like a sports psychologist, but just learn how to deal with, of course, the more difficult situations when he's in front of goal. How does he just, you know, compose himself to be in the right state of mind? And whatever he's done is definitely working, because we saw last season he was a player that had huge potential. He was getting into the right positions, having the opportunities, but was just, like I said, snatching at the opportunities or just shooting too soon or just not quite taking the opportunity, and was very frustrating for owners. This year, he's got that clinical edge, and I think if Bournemouth probably want to keep this guy, they're going to be like, yep, you can have penalties. Yep, you can have free kicks. So I think it's going to make him a really superb asset. The only concern I probably do have is maybe his penalty appeal has dropped down a little bit, with, of course, Kluivert playing well when he came on, scoring that superb goal last night as well. That might mean that Kluivert starts to see some minutes over the next few weeks. That, of course, will take away some penalty share from Semenyo. But like I said, if they want to keep him at the club, they might have to make him the penalty taker, because I think the start of the season he's had, if he keeps that up for a large portion of the year, there's going to be a lot of suitors come the summer, and Bournemouth are going to have a very difficult situation to, of course, keep him on their books. But like I said, if you haven't already invested into him, don't be worried about the upcoming fixtures. He's very much a transitional player. These games could be very, very open and lots of goals in them, so I do think that is going to suit a player like Semenyo, and like at the moment, he's just ticking all the right boxes. Like I said, has that talismanic quality about him. Of course, no European football, so he's going to be a great investment regardless. So if you're on a wild card, or of course you haven't brought him in yet, he is still going to be a very good transfer. That is going to complete today's transfer targets video. Of course, if you did enjoy the content, make sure you're hitting that like button. Make sure you're subscribing as well. Like I said, we're on that road to 20,000 subscribers, and the best of luck for Game Week 8.